When you click on a new AV receiver listing, the first thing you notice is a glossy photo of a sleek black chassis and a paragraph full of buzzwords: Dolby ATMOS, 4K HDR, 7.2 channels, ES-grade performance. It's tempting to think that any of those features automatically translate into a home theater that fills the room with cinema-quality sound. But the reality many of us hit when we finally plug it in is that a receiver can look great on paper and still feel flat, underpowered, or just plain confusing in everyday use. That's why I'm breaking down the Sony STR ZA3100ES 7.2 channel receiver the way a real buyer would, by looking at how it behaves once you actually hook up your TV, speakers, and streaming devices, and whether it really gives you the bang for the buck you expect. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, who should even be considering this unit? The STR ZA3100ES sits in Sony's ES line, which is marketed toward installers and serious home theater enthusiasts who plan a custom setup, not the casual TV watcher who just wants a plug-and-play sound bar. If you already have a multi-speaker arrangement, say, a front left/right pair, a center channel, 2 surround speakers, and perhaps even upward-firing Dolby ATMOS modules, the 7.2 channel architecture gives you the flexibility to drive all of them from a single box. In addition, if you're building a dedicated home theater room with a separate media rack and you need Ethernet switching, PoE support, or the ability to daisy-chain HDMI sources, Sony's built-in 8-port Gigabit Ethernet switch and dual PoE ports are a genuine convenience. In short, the receiver is aimed at people who want a central hub that can handle complex audio-video routing while still delivering a clean, immersive soundscape. On the flip side, if you're looking for a basic stereo setup or you only have a 2.1 or 3.1 speaker system, this model is probably overkill. The 7.2 label might sound impressive, but the extra channels and decoder capabilities won't be utilized by a simple setup, and you'll be paying for power you never use. Likewise, if you expect a straightforward, no-frills HDMI switch that you can toss on a bookshelf, you might be frustrated by the learning curve. The receiver's menu system is fairly deep, and configuring things like HDMI-RC, Dolby ATMOS height speakers, or the integrated Ethernet switch takes a bit of time, something a casual user may not be willing to invest. Now, let's talk power. Sony rates this unit at 110 watts per channel into an 8-ohm load at 1 kHz, with 0.9% total harmonic distortion. For a home theater that aims to fill a medium-sized room, around 20-30 SQM, with dynamic movie sound, that output is respectable, especially when you consider the receiver's Class D design, which keeps heat and power consumption low. In practice, when I cranked up a favorite action film, Mad Max, Fury Road, the bass was tight and the dialogue stayed clear, even during rapid scene changes. The built-in Dolby ATMOS decoder helped position the overhead effects, and the DTS-X support kept the surround field expansive without any noticeable lag. One hidden trade-off shows up when you try to push the receiver to its limits with the front HDMI input that doesn't support 4K HDR. Sony explicitly excludes the front HDMI port from the HDR pathway, which means if your primary video source is a 4K streaming box you plug into that port, you'll lose HDR metadata and the picture will revert to SDR. For most users this might not be a deal-breaker, but for anyone who wants to keep a single HDMI cable from a 4K TV box to the receiver, you'll need to route the source through one of the other HDMI inputs. That extra step is easy to overlook in the spec sheet, yet it can cause confusion when the picture suddenly looks washed out. The built-in Ethernet switch is where the STR ZA3100ES really shines for integrators. With 8 gigabit ports, you can connect multiple streaming devices, a network-attached storage server, and even an IP camera without adding an external switch. The PoE ports are a nice touch for powering low-voltage devices. Think of a smart lighting controller or an IP speaker directly from the receiver. In a house where you already have a wired network backbone, this can reduce cable clutter dramatically. However, if your setup is predominantly wireless, you'll probably never touch those Ethernet capabilities, and they become an unused feature that adds cost without benefit. A practical concern many new buyers overlook is the receiver's standby power draw. Sony's design is fairly efficient. The unit draws under 1 watt when turned off, which is modest compared to some older receivers that sip a few watts continuously. While this isn't a headline metric, it does matter if you're monitoring your electricity usage or aiming for a greener entertainment system. The receiver also supports Music Connect, allowing you to stream high-resolution audio from a PC or network source directly to the unit, bypassing the TV entirely. In my tests, feeding a 24-bit FLAC library through Music Connect delivered clean, detailed sound that rivaled a dedicated DAC, which is a pleasant surprise for audiophiles on a budget.